Bob, I'm looking at you right now, and behind you is a poster. Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, on the wall in this basement. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Lost Ark of the Covenant.
It's
well,
funny.
I get that quite often. I get people asking me a question, because I get compared. I did a show with Dean Cain. I was really going to do the show, Real Police, believe it or not, for Dean Cain.
Okay.
And he came along and
Superman.
and I just talked to him about a Superman, and he said, "Hey, you took my job." He says, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but he gave me the phrase, "the real Indiana Jones," and then National Geographic called me that. So everybody since then tells me the real Indiana Jones. So that poster behind me, it shows that. So I got a phone call. I was over in Israel guiding a tour, and about 150 people in front of the Western Wailing Wall, and Frank Turek was there. He was with Charlie Kirk, who just got shot. He was the guy in the white hat next to Charlie Kirk. I was with Frank Turek, and so we're guiding a tour over there, and the question gets asked. Frank secretively asked this question to be asked of me. So I'm in front of the Western Wailing Wall, and he goes, Bob, the guy goes, you've been compared to Indiana Jones. Do you really build that up? I mean, do you really? I said, no. I said, I'm my own man. I said, I don't really go by that Indiana Jones stuff. I don't really buy into it. I really don't even like the comparison. I want to be my own guy. Well, yeah. Frank had me on speed dial. And when they asked me that question, I'm saying, no, I don't have anything to do with it. He pressed the button and he dialed my phone. I have a ringtone on my phone that's dun da 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 dun da da. So as I'm telling people, I don't do this Indiana Jones stuff, my phone goes off. And you can imagine in front of 100 some people, they're all laughing at me, and I'm going, okay, I got caught.
I was going to say that, and then you pull out a bullwhip, and you're like, I really don't like it.
Yeah.
Let me indulge you.
Where's your hat? You have to let a few more buttons down, though. This interview.
I want to hide as much as I can at this age. Okay?
Yeah,
I'm not Indiana Jones. I'm Indiana Bones now. Okay?
Show us the chest hair. That's how Harrison Ford did it back then. But the Ark of the Covenant, right? There's so many people claim to have either found it, know where it is. It's sort of this legend, and obviously made into Hollywood. I mean, which is kind of wild to think that Hollywood actually make a movie about this. It's one of the weirder things in, sort of scripture. This can't touch it. It's got, a
lot of rules.
How it was built, how it was made, and why it was made. And we've kind of talked about all these subjects on our show, but not specifically the Ark of the Covenant. So I'd love to hop in, pull everything out of your brain about what you know.
A lot of people have claimed to find it, as Nate said. One of those people was Ron Wyatt, who's passed away. Ron believed it was under the place of that Christ was crucified. What are your thoughts on that? Like, there's this whole theory about the blood of Christ. You really want me to expose
that? Because I got another lawsuit coming if I expose it.
Well, then if you just
But if you want me to, I'll expose it. Okay?
You can just say you disagree.
I will tell you what I've never said publicly about it.
Well, let's go, Bob.
Let's do it.
Okay. Ron Wyatt believes it's at over in Jerusalem. There's two places where we believe that Christ was crucified and buried. One is, the Church Holy Sepulchre. They believe that's where it occurred. That's the Roman Catholic viewpoint. And then the other more Protestant one came about by Gordon. He was the general that was killed at Khartoum. They did a movie on it called Khartoum, but he was a national swashbuckling general in the British Army. And when he was in Jerusalem, he said, I see out in my hotel room 2 holes there on the side of the cliff, and that looks like a skull to me. So that's the place of the skull. The Bible says he was crucified. But the Romans never named anything off of a feature. They named it off of people, like at the Temple Mount was named after Fortress Antonia, named after Anthony the Great. Okay, Mark Antony. So
the singer.
So
of course,
Romans like to name things after their people or their heroes. So Gordon says, "Well, I see that's the place of the skull." Left it at that. But then after he was killed at Khartoum, he became arguably the second most recognized man in the world. I mean, in England, every shop owner had black bunting in it, and even in New York, I mean, he was a hero that was worshipped. And they went back and said, "Now, what did he say about this skull face?" So they went over to that place, and then the Church of England bought it, and then they put drip lines in, and they made a garden out of it because it's just a big scrap of desert at one time. And they say that's where Christ was crucified. They found a tomb there, and they said that's where the tomb of Christ was. They don't realize that there's about 40 tombs in that area. They picked the one that was closest, and they picked the one that I went over with Gabriel Barkey, who is the foremost authority of the Hebrew University. He said, "Bob," he said, this was 700 years old when Christ was born. So Christ being put in there, he said this thing was much later, and it's been occupied by several occupants. So he said, this is not the tomb that could not be of Christ. And I am on tape talking about that. And so I started, looking at that. And then...
yeah, Bob, so there's a lot of theories about the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, this is, as we talked about, this is one of the most sought after relics. We know Hitler was looking for it. We know that a ton
Indiana
of
was looking for it.
Since the disappearance of this relic, people have been searching for the Ark of the Covenant. And one person who says they found it, and also it exists beneath the crucifixion site of Christ, is Ron Wyatt, who's passed away, but he was he's also a citizen archaeologist sort of guy who claims he found it. I wanted your take on that because I know your take is different, but that's something we hear a lot in our spaces, like, oh, Ron Wyatt found the Ark, and the blood dripped down from Christ when he was crucified and landed on the Ark, and which is very symbolic and a nice story, but
yeah, what happened?
There doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence for where this thing actually is, or if he actually found it, right? So what are your thoughts on that theory or that purported discovery?
Ron Wyatt makes a lot of claims. He has a great following. There's not a talk I don't go to or give a talk that somebody doesn't ask a question about Ron Wyatt. And he is Seventh-day Adventist, and they really claim that he was receiving his messages from Ellen White, who's the prophetess of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So they're very passionate about it. So I don't know why they disrupt my talks almost every time. So I know the first question is going to be a Ron Wyatt. They seem to know where I'm going to speak, and they go there. And I've never really spoken about Ron publicly until now. I'll tell you the real story. Ron made the claim that he found the Ark of the Covenant underneath Gordon's Calvary. His theory is that the blood came down and it came upon the Ark, and they checked the chromosome counts, and so he has a whole theory on this, and very popular, very followed a lot by a lot of people. It's just all bogus. I'll tell you why. He claims that when he found the Ark in this cave area underneath that area of Gordon Calvary, that he was in there, and that the lid weighed about 900 pounds, and that angels helped him lift the lid off, and there was like 6 guys, approximately, I think, dressed in Levitical garb that helped him to carry out the Ark, and they all died, 6 guys. Okay, now let's just put a stop to that. The first claim, okay, he claims it's 900 pounds. That's his word. He said angels helped him. Okay, that's what he said. But now I know where he can be contested is this. The guy that was with him when he made this claim was a guy named Bob Stuplik, a dear friend of mine. I climbed Mount Ararat with him many times. We have been high on mountains, climbing all over, looking for Noah's Ark kind of thing. And Bob was a great climber. He just died unexpectedly last week. And it was a big blow to me, but his words rang in my ears when he said he was with Ron Wyatt, paid by Ron Wyatt to go into that cave area to find this gold object. He said, Bob, Ron couldn't get in there. And Bob was built like a pencil. He was a very thin guy. He said, I crawled in this little opening where Ron said the Ark was in a cave. He got stuck. Kind of scared him, he said, because when he tried to ooch back, he couldn't because his rear kind of got stuck on the rock. So they kind of had to pull him out. So Bob said, we couldn't get in there. And so Ron came back with this incredible story that he found the Ark on that expedition. And Bob said, I said, why didn't you say anything to anybody? He says, well, it wasn't my place to say anything. He can make any claim he wants. Bob is that kind of guy. Just say, if he's going to say that, he can say that. But I have him recorded giving me his testimony saying that Ron wasn't even in there. It was too small to get into. The IAA did boreholes over there based on his testimony that the Ark was there. And they came back and said, this guy is just wrong. We did boreholes, all that area, spent a lot of money. Said there's nothing there. I think it's another testimony how people want to be, they actually feel like they're serving God. By making a sensational statement, they're believed that people will help them in their faith walk to become closer to God. What they're really doing, I think, is damaging the faith walk of a lot of people, because eventually they're going to be found out to be, untrue in this.
Yeah.
And then it hurts us for all of us that are trying to really say what's truth. So the Ron Wyatt claim, 900 pounds, angels, people dying and everything. The IA said, no, that's not. We didn't have 6 people die. We would have known about it.
Right.
And so I think that claim is just another sensational claim, but I'm surprised that people still follow his words so adamantly. And I hate to talk about anybody and their work. I usually never do that, but I think I have to speak out because Bob just died, and I wanted to be his voice that he didn't really get a chance to say.
Man, I think that's important. I think we deal with in smaller levels, but people will emotionally commit themselves to something so much that they're looking for evidence, and then they'll manufacture things, and then they can't, like you said, change their minds or move forward. But I mean, and our job often is just to be like, I felt like a lot of that story was like, I don't really want to touch it because it seems blurry. I was like, why don't you do an episode on this? It's like, I don't know. That sounds like a wild claim, like too wild. Like you got to be careful with your audience. You got to build trust, and you can't just say anything or bring anything on. I mean, we really try to filter and monitor some of the things that people do and say. So that felt a little suspect to me, like years ago. So
Bob, so it's not there. So you wrote a book on this. You in addition to going into chase down Noah's Ark, the real Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, the location of the temple in Jerusalem and in the Old City. One of the other things you've been after is discovering where the Ark of the Covenant is, if it's somewhere, right, and wasn't melted down by the Babylonians or whatever, right? And so start us on that journey. Like obviously this is the Holy Grail alongside the Holy Grail. This is one of those things in archaeology that everyone's been looking for the last few hundred years.
The biggest find
could be the biggest find, right? This is the ark that went before the armies of Israel. This is the rest or the throne of God in the desert and in the time of Moses. This is the tangible representation and seat for the Most High, for Yahweh, and it's been lost. So where did this journey start for you, and where does it take you?
This is one of those stories. Everybody's excited about the Ark of the Covenant,
of course, yeah.
But I found that people were all over the map and not really looking at going down to the historical facts we have through history and also what the Bible tells us. And Josephus just talks about this too. Originally got involved with this. There's a guy named Robert Van Kampen, who was a billionaire, won Van Kampen Merit. A lot of people. He passed away very young age. He hired me, went to his house, wonderful wife, Judy. We spent the weekend with him. He said, Bob, you come recommended as the guy that can figure this out. And I was very humble. I said, thank you. And he goes, you got an open checkbook. Tell me what you want to do. I want to find the Ark of the Covenant. Well, I wasn't interested in looking for the Ark at the time, but he kind of just sort of nudged me in that direction. I said, great, I'll start. I started with Graham Hancock's book, which is fascinating. Graham gets the lion's share of credit for really doing the tremendous amount of research on the Ark of the Covenant being in Ethiopia. And after 22 trips to Ethiopia and spending a large portion of my life over there and doing tons of research, I believe that they could have the Ark of the Covenant, the actual Ark of the Covenant. Let me explain why I've come to that conclusion, because I don't make dogmatic claims very often, but they either have the replica that they believe to be the Ark, and they've believed it for thousands of years, or they have the real deal.
Right.
Let me tell you why I think it may actually be in Ethiopia.
Let's go.
I'll get slaughtered on this one because a lot of people don't like this to do this. But we need to go back to, first of all, what does the Ark look like? We don't know. We got a very nebulous account in Scripture. It talks about the Ark is in two components. The top portion, the mercy seat, which is pure gold, not solid gold, pure gold. The lower portion is made out of acacia wood, laminated with gold, and the stave poles are laminated with gold too. So for lightness, it couldn't be solid gold, or it would just break. No one could carry the thing. And the top portion of the ark, Steven Spielberg shows them as being these winged creatures that are, like you see in this image right there, and those are impossible to have according to biblical description, because the Bible describes them as being hammered gold, like you take a hubcap on a car, turn it upside down. It looks like it's a big pile of metal, but underneath it's hollow. Right. Well, it was hammered gold, and it was a process they did for building, like, say, King Tut's mask in the Egyptian Museum. It's hammered gold. It's exactly the way they did it with the ark. You cannot have big, high-relief cast objects like this, because they weren't cast, they were hammered. So the premise of the ark looks like this is wrong. It's two angelic creatures that looked at each other called cherubim, and they're probably very low. According to the Ethiopians, they're very low, and they're like an emblem. Philo even calls it an emblem on the top of the ark. So it's more like a seat that you'd have.